Welcome everybody. Today we have with us Dr. Jay Davidson, who's a doctor that focuses on natural functional medicinal approach to Lyme's disease. He is also a popular speaker and a #1 international best-selling author. He's a husband, a father, and a former radio talk show host and church elder. Dr. Jay was recently the host of the Chronic Lyme's Disease Summit with 33 experts in April of 2016. He is also a co-host of the Detox Project, which starts September 26th in 2016. Dr. Jay Davidson is admired for his ability to bridge the gap between the scientific health community and the layperson. And we're so excited to have him here today because many of the people who come to Joyful Belly with digestive health and gut issues also have Lyme's disease. And so welcome, Dr. Jay, on our call. It's great to have you.
It's great to be here on the Joyful Belly podcast, John. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Yeah. So tell us a little bit more about this. How did you get into gut detoxification and the Lyme's disease world?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting story, and it pretty much all revolves around my wife. You know, I went to chiropractic school. I got my doctorate of chiropractic, opened a chiropractic office, and, you know, in that whole process, met my wife, married my wife, and then we opened a practice together and really focused on structural correction as far as chiropractic was concerned. And then about just over 4 years ago, when she had our daughter, our first child, our only child, she had some pretty tough labor. It was a pretty tough, when she was pregnant, and then the labor process was pretty tough, 25 hours natural. And then basically from there, stuff hit the fan, and she lost a lot of baby weight. She got really sick. She got allergic to every kind of food you could possibly imagine. The only thing she could consume for like 17 or 21 days was bone broth all by itself. Otherwise, basically, her throat swelled up and she reacted to everything else. So she was pretty limited in that. She lost her baby weight really quickly, which was obviously not recommended, had to stop breastfeeding. And basically, when I say, I mean, stuff hit the fan. And it was at that point where my whole focus really shifted to figure this out. And going back into her history, she has had health issues and symptoms for quite a while. But it was basically like she was getting by and was doing, you know, okay with getting by and didn't want to get worse. And that's where she was. And then when my daughter came, which we thought was almost a curse with her, almost with being on a deathbed and almost dying, ended up being the blessing in disguise because it forced us to dive deep with her case and really get her well. And basically when she was 7 years old, she grew up in Wisconsin, Madison area. She got really sick. Doctors gave her some medication. All of a sudden, she got brain encephalitis, which is basically brain swelling. She went into a coma for 6 weeks, which I can only imagine what her parents thought at the time. Like, you know, if that happened with my daughter now, I'd be freaking out. And basically, at that time, her mom was like, you know, I'm hearing about this thing called Lyme. You don't know what's going on. Can you at least test her for it? And they're like, no, I don't think it is. And this is, you know, she's 34 now. And this was 7. So, I mean, this is obviously quite a few years ago. And they ended up testing. She came back positive. They gave her IV antibiotics. That continued for a couple of years, oral antibiotics. And basically from that point forward, her life was shifted. And had Lyme disease. She had heart surgeries. She had sinuses scraped. She had some physical trauma, car accidents that caused dizziness. I mean, you name it. Had gut issues, autoimmune thyroid, adrenal problems, mold exposure. What we found out too was heavy metal toxicity. And so was always kind of dabbling in that. When my daughter was born, it was the whole focus. I mean, immediately it was like, could this be Lyme coming back? Could this be the heavy metals that we never addressed, that we detected, but we couldn't figure out how to detox? And sure enough, I mean, fast forward now, she's the healthiest she's ever been. We have a daughter that is healthier than ever. The only thing that we've ever even seen from that whole saga was her baby teeth aren't super high quality, which usually indicates there was, you know, problems during pregnancy, or, you know, the baby had issues when they were really young. So that was really the only thing that's been detected as far as health. And dealing with Lyme, fixing the gut, and really detoxifying heavy metals was the answer for my wife, John.
Mm-hmm. Wow, what a harrowing experience to go through all of that, and for you to take such a passion also in your wife's health. That kind of commitment is incredible. That you made it your business to get your family through this is a testimony to, yeah, it's wonderful. So I'm glad that you shared your story with us. Thank you. I have a few quick questions just from what you said. You said the baby teeth weren't high quality. What does that mean when you said that?
Yeah, so so my mother-in-law, so my wife's mom is a dental hygienist, and then my wife has a couple uncles that are orthodontists. So the dental world is in our world
Okay.
because of that. And then of course my wife is a chiropractor, a chiropractic degree, so do I. So we have kind of the spine teeth thing. But my mother-in-law, so my daughter's, grandma was cleaning her teeth and was like, looks like there's a little cavity. And we just moved out to California. We were just moving out to California, so we didn't have time to get it fixed in
Hmm.
Wisconsin before we moved. And we came out here and we went to a pediatric dentist, and the dentist actually found a few different cavities that were just starting to develop. But it was interesting because we didn't tell her anything about Leela's health history as
Hmm.
far as like Heather's health history and that. But she looked at the teeth and she said, it's almost as if there was trauma or Leela got really sick when she was young,
Hmm.
or maybe there was problems during pregnancy because the teeth aren't fully mineralized and developed.
Hmm.
And that was the first time we'd ever heard anything in reference that possibly, Heather's issues when she was pregnant and the delivery and when, Leela was little could
Yeah.
have actually impacted Leela. So I thought that was very interesting. But the dentist continued to say that basically, with her health, if it's optimal now, that when the adult teeth come in, that won't have that same problem. So
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. Well, tell us then, let's fast forward a little bit to you're dealing with this and all the discoveries and stuff you had about this. So your wife seemed like she was really sick and taking a turn for the worse. What was um, where's the light at the end of the tunnel here? What did you do? What did you come up with?
yeah, so I mean, basically, when my daughter was born on July 4th,
Hmm.
2012, on my wife's 30th birthday, actually. So it's funny, they're both 4th of July babies. But when that happened, my wife just didn't recover. And it was like she couldn't even walk upstairs. She was so sore and things just weren't right. She was
Hmm.
thinking, oh, I'll be back in the office in a week, which is obviously way over exceeding expectations, but you
Hmm.
don't realize it at the time. And when she just wasn't recovering
Hmm.
and just started going downhill, started reacting to all kinds of food, our mind or my mind kept racing like, what's the problem? Why is this happening? This is not typical,
Hmm.
after labor. And basically to know that she had Lyme disease, 25 years ago or 23 years at the time, ago, diagnosed with it, and something that quote unquote maybe you can't fully get rid of. Could it be that reemerging? Because she had a lot of achiness and soreness. If you have that pain that moves around the body, they call it like moving arthritis, where it's like, oh, my knee really hurts today, and then now it's my shoulder the next day, but my knee doesn't hurt.
Hmm.
Moving arthritis can be a sign of Lyme disease, and she was having a lot of those symptoms. And then also back in 2007, so my daughter was born in 2012, so 5 years before that,
Hmm.
my wife was having some health issues, and we were at a practitioner locally. Then we were at a practitioner in Florida, and basically found out that high mercury and lead were issues, and started detoxifying with DMSA. She had a reaction, so we stopped. A year later, at the doctor in Florida, she was put on DMPS, which is another true chelator for heavy metals, and she reacted to that. I actually had a really severe reaction to it. I was just kind of that guy always going along with what he's doing, like, hey, I want to get tested for this too, and I had high lead and mercury as well too. But actions, and so we just pretty much 2008 we said, you know what, there's just no way to really fix this heavy metal toxicity issue truly. There's just nothing we can do about it moving on. So when that stuff happened after my daughter, Lyme came up and heavy metals came up right away.
Hmm.
But what was interesting is the first thing that really seemed to be most problematic was her gut, the digestive tract system,
Hmm.
where she just became allergic to everything. And we're searching, like, what can you even consume that you can get some nutrition from, but that your throat won't swell off and close up from it. And
Hmm.
that's kind of where we ran into the bone broth thing.
So when you say allergic, you mean really allergic here. I mean, some people have a kind of contact dermatitis to various foods, and they may get a allergic reaction a few days later, or their gut feels a little bit sore. But this is that kind of immediate anaphylactic, dangerous kind of allergy. You're saying she kind of developed that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
severe. And I think a lot of it has to do, when you're looking at autoimmune and
Mm-hmm.
pregnancy. So there's two different arms of the immune system, Th1, Th2.
Mm-hmm.
Th1 is more dominant in the first half of the pregnancy. Th2, especially the last half, but especially the last trimester. And then when you give birth, it switches back to Th1. So there's this kind of changing of the guards for the immune system. And then in that, that's where women oftentimes after pregnancy or even during pregnancy can develop autoimmunity, which means there's like an imbalance in the immune system. I think that's really one of the pieces with her. Her autoimmunity really came out.
Mm-hmm.
But looking at autoimmune, the gut is always one of those things that has to be addressed and fixed in order to address the autoimmunity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Now, can you give us just a little bit? What is the difference between Th1 and Th2?
Yeah, so with the immune system, you basically just think of it, you have two different arms and
Mm-hmm.
almost like a teeter-totter. One side, you want your immune system to be level. So you want the teeter-totter to be level. One side's Th1, one side's Th2. And just think of one as like the Army, one's the Navy. So they're both military, they're both, special ops, they're both, going to go after pathogens and things in your body. But like for instance, the first half of pregnancy, Th1 gets more dominant typically. So all of a sudden the teeter-totter starts tipping.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then the last trimester especially, it tips to Th2.
Mm-hmm.
And then after pregnancy, it tips back to Th1. And so
Mm-hmm.
if there's any imbalance in the first place, this is where those things usually get exacerbated. And things like even vaccine actually push Th2 to very high amounts. Certain supplements like let's see, cat's claw, which is known in the Lyme world, that'll push Th1 pretty heavily. Beta glucan will push Th1. Certain supplements like resveratrol will push Th2, or caffeine will push Th2. So certain things actually will kind of stimulate the immune system one way or the other. And then there's other things that will actually, no matter what side your immune system is imbalanced, will help balance that. So if you're Th1 dominant or Th2 dominant, vitamin D is one of those things that'll balance it no matter what. Colostrum will help balance that as well. So there's things that kind of help both camps, and then there's things that will push one side or the other.
Okay. All right. And so, okay, so it's the autoimmune. We started talking about the gut, and we started talking about autoimmune issues, and then we're talking about how the gut was a major player in these immune reactions that your wife was getting, and also clearly we have an immune issue with Lyme's disease as well. How does this all? Can you tell us a little bit more about how this ties in with gut health, causes of damaged guts? Can you talk in that area?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. So there's two things I want to say. I think autoimmunity. There was a doctor, Alicio Fasano, I think his name is, and he came up with this theory called the three-legged stool, that in order for you to be autoimmune, one of the legs of the stool or multiple legs have to be pulled out. And in this three-legged stool, you've got genetics, or the expression of your genes, epigenetics. You've got stress, which is a pretty big category: physical, chemical, mental, emotional stress. And then you've got this third leg, which is the gut. And so if there's gut issues, it can be that leg that gets pulled out on the three-legged stool, that anytime that stool tips, that triggers autoimmune. Now let's dive into the gut, because obviously I know this is Joyful Belly podcast. Let's dive into the idea of the gut. There's actually 3 F's to fix the gut. One is fasting. And this is the whole idea that when you don't eat, your gut can heal. When you eat, your gut has to digest and it can't heal. Now, this could be intermittent fasting daily. This could be block fasting. This could be water fasting, right? I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. Bone broth, juice fasting. So any kind of fasting, that's one F. The second one is fermentation. So that would be like fermented foods, right? The good bacteria. That's one of the 3 F's. And then the third one is fecal transplant. Now, this one has been regulated by the FDA. It's basically taking human bacteria and transplanting it into another human. And the whole idea is that there's certain bacteria that you can't get from a pill or a food that only comes from another human, that you only get from, your mother, like let's see, Bacteroides fragilis, for instance, only comes from another human. And so doing a fecal transplant allows the body to get bacteria that maybe it's missing, that maybe it never got. Maybe somebody was born C-section and they didn't get the right bacteria, or maybe they were given a lot of antibiotics like my wife, and were missing that. And so using the three F's: fasting, fermentation, and fecal transplant.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can maybe think of it like a human probiotic infusion. Maybe we'll use a different name with FDA, and something you can just Google and look up. But using that really as a way that you can fix the gut. And so my wife, she went on a 17 or 21 day bone broth fast, basically, because anything else, her throat just closed up. I mean, it was a bad reaction. So she was forced into fasting. We also did some fecal transplants because we had heard about that, just over 3.5, years ago. This was
Mm-hmm.
before the FDA regulated it. So I was a donor. We actually had a good friend to be a donor, and that's always a fun conversation. Be like, hey, do you mind pooping in a container so we can?
Yeah.
So that's always
Harvest your
interesting.
bacteria.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But it only makes sense, right?
Yep.
So if you look at autoimmune, the gut is always a piece to that. It's a leg, and then the three F's is that leg. So I think that always helps to wrap around it. So looking at, okay, if somebody has gut issues from a clinical side, so a lot of my clients, they have pathogen issues. Lyme disease, one of them, which is the Borrelia burgdorferi bacteria, burgdorferi bacteria, and then also heavy metal toxicity. And I would say one thing that I want to convey to your listeners, John, on the Joyful Belly podcast is that if there's heavy metal toxicity present, mercury, lead, aluminum,
Mm-hmm.
arsenic, cadmium, which unfortunately heavy metal toxicity I think is a modern day epidemic that's not fully recognized, and then I believe there's some weaknesses in addressing it right now that need to be dealt with. But if heavy metal toxicity is present, I don't believe, this is my personal opinion, I don't believe our gut can be fully well, because that heavy metal toxicity is an upstream source that's affecting things downstream in the digestive tract being that. It's the same thing with Lyme disease. Lyme disease affects the brain, the heart, the liver, the kidneys. It gets into the cells. It causes cellular inflammation, and it produces, toxins inside of our body and inflammation. And those things wreak havoc on things that are downstream, and the gut's really one of those. So if you're having digestive tract issues, if there's Lyme disease, if there's heavy metal toxicity, or if there's both, I believe that those have to be addressed in order for the gut to be truly well. You can
Mm-hmm.
improve the gut, but I think if there's something always upstream affecting it, then you're going to kind of hit a wall, hit a limitation
Mm-hmm.
on how well you can get the gut or keep it well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So, and so then how did it go with the fecal transplant? I mean, was there a noticeable improvement after that?
Yeah, so this was early on, and didn't really fully understand how to do it. So there was definitely a lot of trial and error, which,
Uh-huh.
a little
Makes for more
unfortunate.
awkwardness.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't have the healthiest gut growing up. I would
Mm-hmm.
say that's an area that I had struggled in, before kind of cleaning
Mm-hmm.
up my heavy metal toxicity issue. So I kind of speak from experience for gut stuff. So I maybe wasn't the perfect donor. But when my wife did, our friend, he's actually another doctor, used his. She literally, there was I think two transplants back to back that we ended up doing, like one a week, where at night, in the middle of the night, she woke up and just drenched in a sweat. It was like, okay, something changed. Something there. These bugs are, there's definitely things change in the body, and I wouldn't say there was any dramatic, like overnight everything
Mm-hmm.
flipped a switch, but it was at that point that really the gut improved, and it kept improving. And we weren't doing the procedure, properly. There's a website called thepowerofthepoop.com, or it's
Mm-hmm.
powerofthepoop.com or thepowerofthepoop.com, where you can kind of learn a little bit more about this whole topic. But it was definitely an important piece to my wife fixing her digestive tract issues.
Mm-hmm. So then, what about the Lyme's disease, heavy metal toxicity? How did you deal with that?
Yeah, and so this is where, so I have a 5 steps to restoring health protocol book, and it was basically all birthed out of my wife's journey. And then as soon as people heard about her journey, then they started calling me, basically similar story. They're like, well,
Yeah.
she got well. What'd you do?
Yeah.
And so looking back on her case, the big focus right away was calming the inflammation in the digestive tract.
Hold on quick second. What was the name of that book?
My book is called 5 Steps to Restoring Health Protocol.
Okay, so that's the title of the book. Okay.
Yes.
All
Yep.
right, great.
Yep.
It's 5 steps to restoring health protocol. Good. Just to make sure that as people are listening, they can access to that and find it and buy it. Now you said calming inflammation. You were saying about that?
Yes, yeah, the book you can find right on Amazon. You can just
Okay.
type in my name and it'll be the first thing that comes up, Jay Davidson too. But the first thing really that we ended up doing with my wife was calming this like emergency state, inflammatory state that she was in.
Mm-hmm.
And in one of the most powerful things I think you can do in order to calm this down is to work on fixing the gut. Now I say this tongue in cheek that I don't believe you can 100% fix the gut until you work with what's upstream.
Mm-hmm.
But in doing so, setting the stage to kind of calm the gut down, allow the body to quote unquote normalize a little bit so that it allows you then to go upstream. So
Mm-hmm.
the first thing we did was really work with the gut. She did fasting, she did fecal transplants, fermented foods, probiotics. But I think the key you want to focus on is unique bacteria. Don't take the same probiotic for 6 years straight to get 10 or 12 of the same strains. You want to think rotation, you want to think different bacteria. So we set the stage with that and then embarked on going after heavy metals and Lyme disease basically at the same time. And it can be a little overwhelming depending on the person and the state. My wife was in a pretty rough state, so it was
Mm-hmm.
basically worked with some of the heavy metals, then got to the Lyme disease. But there's an intricate relationship, John, with Lyme and heavy metals. So Lyme is a bacteria that not only can be in the gut, but it can be throughout the body, can be in the brain, can be in organs. Heavy metals, if mercury, for instance, has different affinity than lead. Lead loves the bone, so it'll come out during pregnancy, puberty, menopause, or for guys, andropause. Mercury loves the brain, so it can affect insomnia, anxiety, depression, cognition, focus, in anything that's in the brain category. And so she started detoxifying heavy metals, understood half-life, understood how to prepare the body for it, understood how to cycle on and off of it, and then incorporated Lyme disease and pathogens. And I guess the big thing I want to say with Lyme is that you can't just kill the bug to get well. Because if you
Mm-hmm.
could, then that's where maybe antibiotics would have a place because it's all about killing the bug. But with Lyme disease, there is always other pathogens, viruses, which antibiotics don't touch. So there's the Epstein-Barr virus, there's the HHV viruses 1 through 8, HHV6 is pretty popular. There's parasites that are co-infections like Babesia, which causes night sweats, it causes heart issues. There's co-infection like Bartonella, which is a bacteria that loves the brain. There's one called mycoplasma that's linked with pneumonia. So there's all kinds of these bugs. So to deal with Lyme, to say Lyme by itself is a little, it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of it's not correct. I believe it's more pathogens that you have to deal with. So taking the pathogen approach with heavy metals. Now here's where it all connects, is that there's this thing called biofilm. So let's go back to Lyme. Lyme has 3 different forms. It's got a spirochete form, a spiral, so it
Mm-hmm.
loves tissues, joints. It's got this round body form, or what some people call a cyst. So you take antibiotics, it turns into this cyst round body to protect itself. And then when you stop the antibiotics, it comes back out and changes back into a spiral form. And then it's also got this intracellular stealth form where it goes in our cells and it looks like our own cells. So it's got these 3 different basically forms that it can be in. And it also has what's considered a biofilm. Now, if you take all those forms of bacteria and other friends and pathogens and you put like a slime or a snot layer over top of it, or let's say a blanket, that blanket would be the biofilm. And it's another added protection against the immune system. So that biofilm can be made of copper, magnesium, iron, um, calcium, for instance. But here's 2 other ingredients: mercury and lead. So if there's mercury and lead, heavy metal toxicity, either or, and it's an ingredient in the biofilm, there's going to be limitation on how to kill the pathogen because you didn't dismantle that wall. Does that make sense,
Mm-hmm.
John?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So somehow this mercury and lead there, even if Mg and calcium and all those are present, you can still get through. But when the mercury and lead is there, it limits how you could kill the Lyme's disease. Is that what you're saying?
Well, but yeah, basically
Mm-hmm.
that blanket or that snot layer is a layer of protection. So
Mm-hmm.
dismantling it, people will take proteolytic enzymes on an empty stomach. So not a digestive enzyme, but an enzyme that you would take on an empty stomach. It can help dissolve it.
Mm-hmm.
There's different things that can penetrate biofilm like phage,
Are
or
you
what they
talking about
call
biofilm in the gut here, or are you talking about like around these Lyme's
both.
disease organisms? Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
in the gut and in
okay,
the body.
okay.
So if there's heavy metals present, if
Mm-hmm.
you don't detoxify that metal out, it remains an ingredient in the biofilm, and the biofilm is less likely to be able to get broken down because you're not taking those ingredients out,
Mm-hmm.
which means then you don't get to the deep pockets of these pathogens. And I believe you can heal of any pathogen issue, including Lyme, as long as you remove all the pieces to the puzzle. And if the puzzle piece is just focused on Lyme, you're going to be limited. If you expand it to pathogens, you're going to be
Mm-hmm.
having better chances. But if you expand it and look, okay, do I have mold toxicity? Do I have heavy metal toxicity? Do I have
Mm-hmm.
autoimmune gut challenges? And if you look at the body as a whole, I believe it gives a lot better opportunity to really fully heal the body naturally.
Yeah, absolutely. We have this concept a bit in Ayurveda when if a person is taking, for example, an antibiotic to get rid of, or some anti-parasite to get rid of an infection in their gut, which, if people have gut issues, it's not that it's pretty often that they may have to do something like that. Well, if they're eating ice cream while they're taking that anti-parasite, the odds are much greater that one of those worms or one of those bugs are going to survive because they're surrounded by a thick layer of mucus. Use the word snot a few times. There's mucus all over our digestive tract. I'm assuming when you say snot, you kind of mean that
Hmm.
mucus in the rest of the body as well. And mucus is what the body uses actually to trap these bugs. Well, they also hide in the mucus, and so we've got to break up that mucus to get to the bug. And here you're talking about how these heavy metals also participate in protecting the bug in that biofilm layer.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess if I was to summarize this, John, looking at the 5 steps, the book that I wrote,
Mm-hmm.
and you can find more information on my website too, but the book's just a wealth of knowledge. The
Mm-hmm.
first step is detect. Let's understand exactly what's wrong with you and your body so that you can start making a roadmap to address it. If you
Mm-hmm.
have Lyme and you don't know it, that could obviously hinder you in getting well. Maybe you don't have Lyme. Maybe you don't have heavy metal toxicity. Maybe there's something else. So detect. Let's understand. Okay, let's say you have gut issues.
Mm-hmm.
What else is problematic too that we have to make sure to address? The
Okay.
second step is drain. And draining is all about the idea of making sure that these sewage pipes that we have in our body, or these draining, what I call the draining pipes, are moving. So drainers would be your colon, right? If you're constipated, that organ's not draining. If your liver and bile are backed up, liver gallbladder are backed up, that's not draining. The kidneys are drainers, the skin is drainers, the lymphatic system is draining. So the first thing to embark on is making sure those things are normalized and moving before
Mm-hmm.
you ever embark on trying to kill bugs off, whether it's in your gut or inside your body. Because
Mm-hmm.
if you start killing off bugs before the drainage pathways are open, you start getting herxing, you start getting reactions because the debris can't move anywhere. So second step is drain.
Mm-hmm.
Third step is then going after pathogens and eliminating them in the gut, in the body. The fourth step is all about rebuilding the tissues. And I really like to have people focus on what is your body quote unquote weakness, right? So I had knee surgery when I was in high school. My left knee, it's an area that if I don't sleep enough, if I don't get enough sleep at night, the next day, like, it feels weak. It's an area where my body feels susceptible. Some
Mm-hmm.
people have susceptibilities with their thyroid, their adrenals, their brain and their thought process, their gut. If they don't sleep well, then they get really loose stools because their gut gets very upset.
Mm-hmm.
So focusing on that individual organ or organs that are more susceptible for you. And then the fifth step, the last step, is detox. And that's where in 2007, 2008, when I had reactions and my wife had reactions to heavy metal detoxing, we basically just skipped right to step 5. And that's what created that reaction. We also weren't necessarily given the best protocols, but as long as you prep the body, make sure it's prepared, and then following proper protocols,
Mm-hmm.
then you should be absolutely fine with the detoxification process. But it's step 5 for a reason. That everybody wants to
Mm-hmm.
jump there, but I think it's one of the last things to really get to.
Well, most of our users will consider that draining phase to be the detox phase, right? That if you are taking a laxative and flushing the liver, the kidney, then that for most of our users, they consider that to be the detox. So now, when you say detox, are you talking about taking chelators?
Yeah, awesome question. So
Okay.
I love to separate the word drainage from detox. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like, especially in the, natural realm, functional medicine realm, detox is the only word used. And I
Mm-hmm.
think of drainage to kind of drain debris, I think of detox to actually grab on to chemicals and pull them out of the body, whether it's using a true chelator like DMSA, DMPS, ALA, or taking something that's newer and really effective as well too, like a clinoptilite fragment. It's basically a fragment of zeolite, but using something to actually go in to grab on to chemicals to pull them out. I think of that for detox.
Okay.
And then I think of drainage just to kind of move things. And I like to separate those words because oftentimes you'll hear detox used for everything.
Yeah, yeah, and of course, in the draining phase, you have both the getting the laxative type action, which is kind of purging the system or flushing, and then you also have thinning the fluids. And in Ayurveda, we have this concept of like thick and thin fluids, and how do you thin out the fluids so that things do move well. So there's all kinds of nuances to draining, to detoxing, and I guess specific tips and stuff that are in your book that you're going to tell people how to go through this more specifically. Is that how it works?
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of detail in the book. I've got a lot of information on my website as well too. But I just want to pass the concept on. You don't have to purchase a book. You don't have to listen to the stuff if my stuff it doesn't resonate with you. But probably the easiest thing to increase the detox side of things is glutathione. Doing something to raise glutathione. Glutathione is the strongest antioxidant in our body. It's natural. It exists. Our body makes it. And basically, we've found that for those people that have, let's say they're on the autism spectrum or cancer, their glutathione's really low. The average American will have higher glutathione. A healthy American is going to have even higher glutathione. So glutathione's a natural antioxidant. It's 5,000 times stronger than vitamin C or vitamin E, even though that gets a lot of attention. But glutathione also is a natural detoxifier. So I think raising glutathione levels is a good place to start. And you can do that with food. There's certain foods that increase glutathione, like broccoli sprouts is one of the highest foods that actually raise glutathione. Grass-fed whey protein, if you do okay with the whey, as far as, for a protein, grass-fed whey will raise glutathione. There's supplements like N-acetylcysteine. There's things that help to recycle glutathione in the body. There's actually procedures that you can do, like a coffee enema, that actually increase glutathione enzyme S-transferase. So there's a lot of ways I think you can increase detoxification without just taking a supplement. I mean, you can eat different foods that help it. You can also do different procedures like a coffee enema, for instance, that increases glutathione. And then that inevitably is working on the detoxification pathway too.
Great, great. So, and it almost sounds like some of these protocols are useful for other difficult to kill bugs as well. Because from what I'm hearing is that much of what you've talked about isn't just unique to Lyme. That if you have a bug, these bugs all have strategies to burrow in our tissues and evade antibiotics, evade our immune system and other means to get rid of them. Right? Life tries to survive, and so these critters know how to get away. And what we need to do is come up with a kind of multi-pronged approach to get past their defense systems. And so a lot of what these techniques you're saying could probably work for folks that have other pathogens other than Lyme. Is that true?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. I mean, really, it comes down to the philosophy of the body. If there's a pathogen, whether it's a parasite, virus, bacteria, fungi, in the body that is wreaking havoc, same principles really follow with it. But it helps to kind of put things in perspective for those that are dealing with chronic Lyme or suspecting Lyme, that you can't just kill the bug. You got to get the body well as a whole. And it's not about throwing a bug bomb in the body. It's about how can you support the body, rebuild the body, and then just remove whatever the source or sources are. If you remove what's the source or sources of your health issues, your body was designed to get well. Your body was designed to heal, it was made to heal. I always like to tell people, God doesn't need any help, just needs no interference. So just remove the interference, let the body work. And if a bug is interfering, let's deal with that. If heavy metal is interfering, deal with that. If the gut is the primary issue, deal with that, fix that, heal that, and the body will function and be well.
Great. Great, and your whole clinical specialty is in this area of Lyme disease. So you probably have a lot of specific tips for folks who are suffering from that. If our users at Joyful Belly have Lyme disease and they can't heal their gut, then it sounds like Dr. J can really help you. So think about using him as a resource and check out his website. Now, you have? I see a few different websites that you've sent over to me. You had that Lyme Disease Summit recently. The Detox Project is coming up, and I know you have your website as well. Tell us a little bit about this Detox Project that's coming up.
Yeah. So you can just go to the thedetoxproject.com. There's about 35 different experts in the detoxification world covering not only an overview on toxins and chemical exposures, but how to detoxify, not only chemicals, but also from an emotional standpoint. So there's a lot of great, great well-known experts like Sayer G, Dr. Mercola, Mike Adams, the health ranger, that are really weighing in on the whole detoxification project. So it's a free online, September 26th. You can just sign up, check that out. But I would recommend just go to my website. It's drjdavidson.com. And on there, I've got a free ebook on Lyme disease. So if you're suspecting that, I think that would be a great resource. No catches, it's free. So you can get that Lyme disease ebook. And then also I have, if you're interested on the heavy metal detoxification and toxicity side of things, I actually have an ebook on that as well too. So just some good resources to give you some more tools to, again, better your health and move on and get well.
Yeah. Most, and I know that most of the people who are listening, who have been into Ayurveda for a while, know that detoxing is one of the most important aspects of Ayurveda. And as we surf the internet, we see a lot of people with a lot of different theories around detox. Well, they're all coming together for this upcoming summit, the Detox Project. So you can hear from various industry leaders about these theories of detox and how to best detox you, so that you can come up with protocols that are going to fit your body. And of course, Dr. J. Davidson is providing some of those resources as well. So that's great. Thank you, Dr. J. I really appreciate all the information that you have shared with us today from Fecal Transplant. Very interesting and I'm not going to say controversial, because there's nothing controversial about it. It's helpful, but it's just new for people, but very effective. And then chelation of heavy metals, dealing with Lyme, and how to get past the biofilm. That's all great information that's going to be very useful to our users. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me, John. It's been a pleasure.